Whenever I work with Microsoft Excel, I'm always on the lookout for ways that I can ensure that data entry is correct. It's so easy to make typographical errors. Data validation is one of the ways that I can protect my data on the spreadsheet. In all versions of Excel, data validation is found under the Data menu. 2007, you'll see it right on the ribbon. Earlier versions, of course, you'll need to select it from the menu. When I select data validation, it will apply to whatever I have highlighted on the screen. If I have a column highlighted, it'll be the entire column. I can do a row, I can do the entire worksheet, or I can do just one individual cell. The choice is yours. Here's how it works. I'm going up to data validation and selecting it. The dialog box pops up which asks me for settings, an input message, and an error alert. Errors are after the fact if you violate my rule. Input is to tell you what the rule is, and settings is where I set the actual rule. Notice for the validation that any value is allowed. This is the default for all cells within Excel. I'm going to the pull down and I'm going to choose whole number. When I select whole number, I'm going to say I'd like that to be between 1 and 10. Now, if I'd like to give you a message on data input, I'll go to the input message. Here, I'm going to type in, enter a number between 1 and 10. And now I'll hit OK. Notice when I'm on the cell, you have a little flag saying, enter a number between 1 and 10. If I move off to another area of the spreadsheet, I do not see that flag. Again, back on the cell, and the flag appears. If I enter 1, everything is fine because I've met the criteria. I'm going to enter 11 this time. Once again, tab, and notice that I get an error message. I must retry and set my number to be an accepted value. Let's go back to data validation again. This time, I'm going to remove the message from the input message and instead put it in the error alert. Now this time, you will not have a message flagged on the screen. When I go in, everything is fine. If I type in a number that's acceptable, nothing happens. Once again though, if I type in a value that is not within the range, I get an error message. The difference? The error message is what I typed in this particular time. When setting up the data validation, we get a great amount of control. An error message, an input message, and you can do both. Settings allow me now to define the type of data that I have. And you'll notice I can use decimals, dates, times. I can even control the amount of text that you enter into a cell or customize anything that I want to. Using this data validation really ensures that all your information is correct on the screen. In the last movie, I talked in terms of data validation for really protecting the information on the screen. We can also use this tool for a type of automation that will give us a list rather than having to type in the data. Once again, I'm going to use data validation. For this particular feature though, I'm going to select a column. Let's say, for instance, that I'd like you to enter the name of a shipper against an invoice. Now, we're only authorized to use 3 or 4 shippers, so I don't want you to type in whoever you'd like. I'd like you to select from a list. That's where data validation can come in handy. I've selected the entire column, so it's used on each of these cells. I'll go to data validation. You'll notice that it's telling me that some cells do not have any settings. Do I want to extend it? And I'm going to say yes, please do. You'll notice when it comes up, it was just letting me know that I had already set a validation rule, and that's okay. I just wanted you to become acclimated to some of the messages that come up so you're not worried about them. If you still want this validation rule turned on, just say okay. I'd like to switch it though, so I'm going immediately to allow, and this time I'm going to say list. When I go into the list, you will notice that it comes up with source. The source now allows me to actually type in the items that will be in the list. I'm going to type in the shipping companies that can be used within our company. I'm allowing UPS, FedEx, the Postal Service, United States Postal Service, and DHL. I'm happy with the items on the list and I'm going to say OK. Now I want you to note that for each cell in this range, I get a pull-up. And you'll notice the pull-up allows me to select one of the items from the list. Not only does this eliminate typographical errors, it also takes away any guesswork with who I'm allowed to ship. In using the validation, we determined now that I can limit what you put into a cell, but I can also automate it, so there's less hassle for you in the day-to-day data entry. In the preceding movies, we discussed the advantage of working with data validation to limit what can be entered into a cell. Sometimes we just want to keep people out of a spreadsheet or out of a particular cell. In this movie, I'd like to talk about protecting your data. There are two functions that I would like to talk about at this particular time. The first is setting a password. The second is protecting individual cells on a worksheet. Let's start with setting a password. I'd like you to consider using Save As rather than Save when saving all your documents in Excel. By selecting Save As, you will notice that there is a Tools button on the menu. Now, in prior versions, you will notice that the Tools menu will be in the upper right-hand corner. It's exactly the same menu, just a different location. Select Tools and go to General Options. In General Options, here you'll notice that I can set a password to open this particular file. I can have yet another password to modify it. This is where I can really set up a document so that it's read-only. This is a great protection. You will eliminate someone from accidentally typing over formulas and other information within the spreadsheet. Also, if I do choose to save changes, it will force me to put a new name to the spreadsheet. That means your original document is protected and I can still make changes and save them, but to a new document. Notice on the top also that it'll allow me to create a backup. Now this can be a very good idea for some important documents, but be cautious. If you set it for every single document, you could have a storage problem on your hands. I'm going to simply say OK, and you'll notice I'm back at the Save As screen. This is identical to Save in that I just name my file, the location, and the type of file, and simply set Save. In this instance, I'm just going to cancel out. Utilizing Save As rather than Save is just a little extra bit of protection. Now what about the cells? I have a copy of an invoice on the screen, and very frequently we'll have a little disclaimer or information on the bottom that we do not want anyone to change. Here's where protection comes in. First, keep in mind that when you're protecting a worksheet, by default, Excel will lock every single cell out and not let anyone make any changes. But perhaps I'd like you to be able to put the client's name in. There's some cells I want protected and some cells not. We can do this with ease in Excel. The first thing I must do is format the cell to be unlocked. To format a cell, I need to go to the Format menu. Now in the older versions, it was a menu on its own. In 2007, I'm going to the ribbon for Number and to the pull down next to it. Here I'll find Format Cells. You'll notice in all versions we have a protection tab. By default, all cells are marked to lock. When we protect the sheet, they will be locked. So I'm unlocking the cells I do not want protected. I'll simply say OK. You'll now be able to type under Name. To set the protection itself, I'm going to Review in 2007. In prior versions, I'll stick with the Tools menu. Here's where I'll find Protect Sheet. In protecting the sheet, you'll notice it immediately asks me if I would like a password. It will protect the worksheet and the contents. I'm going to simply go ahead and say OK. Now here's what happens. When I go to Name and I type in a new name, when I tab, it takes it with no problem. When I go down to my disclaimer and I hit the Delete key though, you'll notice that I immediately get an error message. I have the best of both worlds now. I can limit where you can type on this spreadsheet. This is a wonderful way to protect your formulas. Now notice, when I selected the protection of the sheet, the button has changed to Unprotect. It's telling me if I do want to type in that I must unprotect it first. Here's where it's a really good idea to set that password so that someone doesn't accidentally select Unprotect and open up the entire spreadsheet. Parts of automation is to protect ourselves from doing things a little too fast and causing extra work. Setting up protection is well worth the effort when it comes to automation.